What is a miracle?
Change of perception. That's what the Course says it is.
And what happens when we change the perception?
Well, when we see things differently, what is it, White Dyer said, when we see things differently, the things that we see are different, something like that.
The world changes.
Yeah.
What's a shift from perception to vision, I guess, as the Course would say.
How would you, each of us, take a minute and think of how you would change the world?
Why would I change the world if it's a dream?
So change the dream, change the world.
Quit dreaming.
That would be all right.
There are a lot of places in the Course where he talks about changing the world.
The only one I remember is seek not to change the world, seek rather to change your mind about the world.
Which is changing the world.
Oh, yeah.
I think the prayer of St. Francis.
Sorry.
The prayer of St. Francis, for me, that's my perception. That would be how you would change the world. By changing your life, what you can do, with the prayer of St. Francis. That's like my favorite prayer. Because that talks about what you can do, not what everybody else needs to do. Your contribution, just kind of like the Course is, by you changing your perception, and accepting of your forgiveness for your brother, forgiveness for yourself. It's kind of, it starts the chain reaction that's needed to change the world. That's my perception. So, take it for what it's worth.
I think if I look at that, okay, so what's the shift? Then for me, feels like a desire for love. Just increase loving and peace. Increase loving and peace, and with that always seems to be a sense of clarity. Just the clarity, and in the clarity there is love and peace. I know that's, if I'm looking at, okay, if there comes desire in me, if I think, how do I want to change the world, it's for that, just to feel that, to know that, and feel that.
Anyone else? How would you change the world?
Why would you change the world?
Well, that's an interesting question. Would you?
No, I wouldn't change it at all. I think it's a perfect learning device, just like it says.
And wasn't it today's lesson where he talks about changing the world? Or was it yesterday?
Maybe I'm on the wrong lesson. I am as God created me. Is that the lesson today?
Yeah.
Yes.
But yesterday's is a lot like that. It's seeing your brother very differently. To me, it's seeing my brother as my savior, and that's a big shift
Why?
in perception of the world.
Why wouldn't you change the world, John?
Well, I think that God has a better perception of what it ought to be than I do.
So you still would change the world, but you would change it according to God's plan instead of your own.
Yeah, but that's not me. That's God doing the work. I'm lazy.
Well, forgiveness would certainly change the world. Accepting the atonement for myself would change the world.
Yes, it certainly would.
There again, I always ask, why do we need forgiveness unless we've condemned? So condemning is, if we were going to change anything about ourselves, we would cease condemning. And then we would change the world that way.
The world would change.
Hmm?
The world would change
Yes,
if
it
we
would.
stopped that. Yes. I think these are important questions for us to look for the answers to, look for how we feel about an answer to. Otherwise, it's going to impede what we get out of the course. If we don't have a clear answer for that, then what we get from the course is going to carry a mixed message. At times we will seem to receive some healing, and at other times our inner mind, our ego mind is asking, what's the point in it?
I think in respect to what Jim was saying, if I stopped condemning myself, that would be a form of forgiveness, wouldn't it?
I don't know anything.
That's the only point.
I don't know of anything else that would do it.
Yeah.
Well, I may have been misunderstood. Condemning others is the same as condemning myself. So if I want to live as love, which I think that's what we're all kind of moving towards, we want to live as love, then condemnation ceases to be something we involve ourselves with at all. In other words, I'll look at everybody and see them as perfect.
Do you ever catch yourself up during the day, finding that you've made a judgment about something or someone
Absolutely.
that seems to contradict what you expect from the world? Or do you see that the things the judgments that you are making are the confirmations of what you want to see in the world? That can be a little discouraging, can't it?
Yeah.
To notice how many judgments you make that say, well, wait a minute, yesterday I said I didn't want this. Today I've changed my mind again.
Isn't it in one of the lessons to
Yeah.
try not to judge anybody for an hour or something like that?
And one of them says
It's
today,
not,
I
it
will
should
judge
be.
nothing that occurs.
What's that come?
I say if it's not, it should be.
Yeah, yeah. Even an hour. It's tough.
Well, an hour would be a real triumph for me.
I don't think so.
I don't think so either.
You can.
I found myself today was really challenging. Oh, it's a challenging day for me at work. And
Today's lesson?
no, today at my job.
Oh,
And as you know, I work with very, very challenging special needs kids, most of which are on the autism spectrum. My kiddo right now is a big kiddo. I think he weighs more than I do. And he has not only autism, but he has Down syndrome. And so his rough edges in terms of rigidity and fixation and those kinds of things can be pretty hard. It can be like a 10-foot thick brick wall. And also, I mean, over the top, probably beyond what any of you have ever seen in terms of attention-seeking behavior. Just so much wanting attention. And what I feel under that is he wants connection, you know, which is very different for most kids on the spectrum.
what do you do now?
So he, for me today, I found myself like sitting there going, what am I doing here with these children? And I'm 12 years into this, right? Given like the hardest cases, I had a couple of the hardest cases in the state of Hawaii when I lived over there, and had quite a bit of progress with those cases. But still, even so, it's like, what am I doing here? And I'm feeling this, like, I'm looking at him, and I've realized this before, years ago, like, well, what I'm working with is resistance. This is all meeting resistance, because that's what it is. The programming I'm given, the expectations of how I'm to perform with these children, what I'm supposed to help
Yes.
them do. They don't want to do most of it. So they're resistant to almost all of it. And so my job is to make these kids do things they don't want to do. My job is to push through
Is that really
resistance
your
and,
job?
you know, huh?
Is that really your job?
I mean, that's what I'm told, right? So I'm sitting there, I'm going, am I a congruent human being? I mean, I was like looking at a whole assessment of my whole work is just a big question mark. Like, what is this I'm doing here? I'm looking at
Well,
him
that's a
and
question
he's
you're going to have to answer.
all these things. And I'm like, my nature would just look at that and get up and walk away.
Okay,
Right, do
stop,
all
stop.
that, but I don't.
Stop for just a minute, because you're rehashing a lot of stuff right now. We all get the confusion that's available with that.
Uh-huh.
So stop for just a minute.
Yeah.
Now, ask yourself, if you were God, what would you do?
I wouldn't do much of anything.
Yeah, you probably would.
When he's having the behaviors that I'm talking about right now and thinking of,
You probably would, but the point is that if you thought of yourself as connected to Him, as God, then what you would do would have an entirely different character.
well, I would love him. But what that looks like in terms of an action
Yeah, what would that look
is
like?
very different. So when he's, for instance, doing things that are harming other children, it looks like physically removing him. And he's very difficult to physically remove.
Okay.
So that's what I mean by, and there I'm dealing with this huge ball of resistance, and that's what I'm hired to do. So it's
Okay, another question.
it's really a trippy position to be in.
Another question then. Do you think that with his condition, you are connected to him? Now be careful. Do you really think that?
At times, yes. I think I'm connected with him always. I don't know about what you mean about the condition. It's not so much the
With his
conditioning as
behavior.
much as being connected with him.
With his behavior. You're not connected
No.
with his behavior.
No,
No, we know that.
no.
But during his bouts of bad behavior, are you connected to him?
I wouldn't say right in the moment of him acting out, but I can get connection with him oftentimes pretty quickly.
And what happens when you do?
He can shift. He can shift.
So why don't you change that, do that all the time?
It's not always necessarily possible that because he's also got his own thing going, and if he's just spinning,
No, that
spinning,
wasn't a
spinning,
rhetorical question.
huh?
That was not a rhetorical question. And incidentally, this applies to all of us. Nicole just happens to be.
No, I love this because this helps me. I'm in quite a challenging situation with this kid, and I want to serve him.
You
So,
are,
Have you told him
one way or
about-
another.
oh God, yes, yeah. There's a lot of love there, and a lot of
You are serving him.
yeah, yeah.
But is it, the point I'm getting at, is it
Yeah.
about him?
No, how I'm feeling about it's about me, totally about
When I
me.
ask the question, why
Yes.
don't you do this all the time?
Yes.
And there's not a clear answer. That answer is not about him. In other words, the reason you don't always approach it as if you were God has nothing to do with him.
Yes, that's right. That's right. Yeah, so that's my question. What I was leading to and what I was saying was my end question to myself was, am I sitting here resisting the resistance in this kiddo?
And, the
And that's
answer
what I
is-
feel like, yeah. That's what I feel like was going on for me when it was just feeling like too much. And it's pretty, I mean, I've been doing this a while and I'm pretty good at it. It takes a lot for me to get to that point where it's like, ugh. I'm starting to feel ungrounded in my being, you know. And I was feeling that way today. I was feeling that way. And that's the question that came to me in the end. It's like, wait, am I resisting the resistance? Yeah, I think I am. I feel like I am.
When I read the title to today's lesson,
Yeah.
it hit me like it does occasionally. Oh my goodness. Am I really? Am I really as God created me? Well, maybe I believe God created something else. That's a possibility. My ego would certainly say that's true.
Well, and then we see that everywhere.
And
So then I can see
becomes-
that in him. I can see that
becomes our world.
everywhere. Yeah.
Yes. And that world can
Oh,
change
man.
minute by minute.
He's serving me because I'll tell you when you have someone. No, he does serve
We're
me.
serving each other.
We serve each other. But I mean, it's not just that I'm serving him.
No.
He serves me a lot because I tell you, when you have someone all day just sitting there farting at you and poking you and doing all these things, you know, to try to get a reaction.
It's as difficult
It's
to
like,
say.
okay, how,
It's as
you know,
difficult to say he serves you as to say that you don't serve him. There has to be a completely neutral equation between the two.
what do you mean now?
You have to see, in order to feel a legitimate connection
Yes.
with him, you have to see that both you and he share the same image of each other.
Yes.
Not
Yes.
one more predominant than the other,
Yes.
but an equal image.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's hard to tell. It's hard to tell who's the teacher and who's the learner. You know, these situations.
Yeah.
And the truth of the matter is, all of us, all the time, are both.
Yes, that's true.
Yeah.
It's absolutely true.
Well, and it can be
In
so
this
hard
world,
sometimes to
that's where it
find
has
it
to
too. To find it, you know, if behavior looks so outlandish, sometimes it's hard to find it to say, oh, that's me. Where's that in me?
That's why
You know? But if I look, I can find it.
that's why we talk about the split mind. And that's what splits the mind. The periodic need not to be as God created you.
Yeah, so the moment I decide, okay, I've had enough, this is enough, and
And so it's perfectly legitimate to ask the God self to relieve you of what's going on in the moment. Get his behavior off my back. I need some time. I need some space. Perfectly all right.
that's even wise.
Well, it serves the same purpose.
Yeah.
Because it is...
It's realizing what support is there.
It
you
really
know.
is.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
it's interesting. We sit in these rooms and we learn that we're all one. And there is no separation between us and God or us and anybody else. And I got that up here, but I don't live my life that way.
You don't have it down here.
Yeah, but at this point in my life, I'm getting really small, subtle instances of trying to see that, you know, to look past the body and see who the person really is. But it's really small and it's really inconsistent. But if I really knew it down here, like you say, Jim, I would live my life that way. I remember the unity minister on Bay Ridge who used to say the longest journey in the world is from here to here.
Well,
It's a wise statement.
and it seems easier to live that way when the situations aren't so hot. And when you get, and that's the thing with the kind of work I do in the schools is it's like,
That's why
ooh,
I'm-
it's in my face like all the time.
That's why I'm suggesting,
So I
you can ask
get
for
to
the
work
work
with
for
that. Yeah.
that's not letting go of your responsibility.
You need to be proud of yourself for being there in a very difficult situation. And there's a lot of people that say, no thanks, I've got something else to do. You didn't say that.
No, but it's more like a feeling like it's my assignment. You know, it's like where, like honestly, like
That's,
it fits. You know,
that's
it's
getting it backwards though, honey.
huh?
That's getting it backwards again.
How so?
Would you say it was his responsibility to take care of you? And if you can't say that, how can you say it's your responsibility?
I don't mean it that way. I mean it in both ways. Like it's an assignment for me,
An assignment for you to,
just for me, like to help me wake up. Like an assignment that's given to me.
Like your script.
Not, yeah, like,
Yeah.
like it's just a feeling like it's where I'm supposed to be.
who writes your script?
I don't know. I could say I do, but I'm not, I don't want to say that unless I feel really in touch with it. You know what I
The
mean?
truth is, we both do. I mean, we have the God self script and we have the ego script.
Yeah.
Maybe the question is, who am I listening to?
It's more like
in this
feeling
moment?
it. It's more like, I'm a feeler, so it's more like feeling it. Feeling like I'm in the right place, you know? And it's, I don't know, I guess I haven't even stopped to ask who's writing it. I don't even think of it as a script. I just feel it as a feeling. If something doesn't feel right, like I'm not supposed to be here, then I need to not be there. I need to shift.
Sometimes it may not be right for you to be there. Yeah.
I struggle with, there's another lesson in the Course that says, I will play my part in God's plan for salvation. Well, is there a way not to do that? Is there a way that I'm not playing my part? And I suppose the only way to not play your part is to delay. There's no question in my mind that we're all going to play our part out of the dream. The only freedom we have right now, apparently, according to the Course, is freedom of choice. And that's freedom of choice between only two choices. And that is two guides to listen to. We only have a choice to decide to listen to the ego or to decide to listen for the Holy Spirit. And the problem that we've got is this whole world that we think we are in is constructed from listening to nothing but the ego, basically, for almost all of it. So that's what we're going to have to be vigilant only for God and His creation or His kingdom, is to just every moment and every second, like the Course says. This is the challenge. This is what's tough from this perspective for me, is this idea of, okay, which voice am I listening to? Am I playing my part in God's plan for salvation? And the problem is, if I try to determine what's loving and what isn't, I'm usually, if not always, coming from my ego perspective of what I think loving is. So it's a good guideline, but like you say, the only place it's really a guideline is in the heart, in the feelings.
You can feel it. You can feel it for sure.
So that, I don't have a clue. I would never end up in your situation. because it's not what I signed up for. But I'm sure there's a whole lot of people who would not like to sign up for the role I'm playing. So it's a strange thing, but I think as Tom was going with this a few minutes ago, is that we've all decided this. We've all made these choices, and we're playing them out. And we're getting close to realizing, I think, that there is a better way. And that's why, for a lot of us, things like this are happening, where our egos are right up against it. And we're put in impossible situations. In the Manual for Teachers, if we get there today, it talks about that. We do that. We've done it collectively. We've done it, I believe, as all selves being part of and all of the Christ at the same time. Making agreements to go through this learning experience that ends up with the idea that we don't need a learning experience. But we know experientially now why.
You know what, though? You're touching on something that, Tom, you started to touch on that's really important for me right now that I've been asking for, and that is to really, this whole thing of really living from guidance, really handing life over to Christ, to the Holy Spirit, to really be guided. And when I feel that, it's so radical. It's so every moment. And I know every moment is a real far reach from where most people are living, certainly from where I'm living. If I could do every hour remembering to really, really in earnest, completely, that have that much surrender, but in every moment, in every situation, in every circumstance. And I really want that. And so I feel almost like
That's the place you have to stop yourself to say, I really want that. See, if you really wanted that,
You'd have
that's what you'd have.
right.
it. So you have it.
Rather, we teach ourselves, part
Well,
of our learning.
I think I'm being given situations to turn
Is that when you
to
feel,
turn to guidance and to ask for help.
yes,
That's what I
when you feel
feel.
certain about something, that's the moment to turn within and say, now show me what I really want.
Right. So that's what it feels like to me, is that when I say I want this, okay, I want this. This is what I
Yeah.
want to realize.
Let's do the
Then
lesson.
the situations come,
Let's do the lesson today, because we're covering a lot of information that was in the lesson. But I think the lesson probably does a better job than what we are without it. Danny, would you start by reading the first paragraph?
Which lesson, Tom?
162,
Danny?
Lesson 162?
is
I
that,
forgot what the lesson
Yeah.
was today.
I am as God created me?
Yeah, that's the one.
So you just want me to read the first paragraph?
What page is that, honey?
It's on,
307.
yeah.
So just the first paragraph, Tom?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Oh,
I am as God created me. This single thought, held firmly in the mind, would save the world.
Oh, my goodness. That single thought held firmly in the mind will change the world. Wow. Wow.
you were just asking us about changing the world.
Is this,
Well, this is an interesting way it's written, though. It doesn't say change the world, it says
Save,
save
it
the
says
world.
save the world.
What are we saving?
Well, as far as I
Very
know,
similar.
we're saving every loving thought, and to me, we're saving, here's what I think. I think when I get to this point, and I save the world, it's the Holy Spirit's coming through me, and I feel in the heart that forgiveness of everything within it. And that I equate with resurrection. And that's my idea of saving the world. It's the idea that every apparent wrong that seems to be going on, that seems to deserve condemnation, is forgiven and resurrected, and then that is the change. And that's where I go with the Course, that the real world is a two-part process. First, we see the forgiven world, and then we see a world that is changed. And we don't see, in my mind, the way I read the Course, we don't see bodies first. When we're seeing other aspects of the wholeness, it's represented by light at that point.
I think that's what I was trying to say with the prayer of St. Francis. To me, that's saving the world, because the balance can get so much into the dream. And like, part of the prayer is, where there is darkness, let me see light. You are created divine in God. We have that power. So in order to save the world, meaning bring the vibration up, you have the goodness inside you to demonstrate every time, that forgiveness of yourself, forgiveness of other people, instead of being this hateful condemnation, living in the ego type thing. It takes you out of that. That to me, I guess, is saving the world. You're bringing it up so that we can all ascend to a higher plane.
Another way to look at it might be that when I'm in that total connection,
Right.
and call it the Holy Spirit, call it Christ, call it Jesus, call it the self, whatever you want, to that connection to unconditional love.
Right.
I am the light.
Yes.
I have no choice but to see everything in the light. And it looks through all the illusions of all the stories, of all the separations. And that is the resurrection itself right there. In this mind that is connected to all mind, which is the only mind. So there's no other way to see it than in that place of being.
I'm curious if you were in that space and some hyperactive, big, healthy, strong child was coming at you with rage in his eyes and swinging a missile, and
Couldn't
would you
happen.
be able to look at him and say,
Could not happen.
say,
If you're in that space, it can't.
behavior is irrelevant?
No,
That's not
because
necessarily true.
Listen
That it
to
can't
what
happen.
Tom is saying.
That's
They
not
say that
necessarily
That couldn't happen. That would not be part of the vision that he was holding at the moment. So it couldn't happen.
it
You
could
don't want to
not.
go into teaching.
Pardon?
You don't want to go into teaching.
We're beyond bodies at that point.
Yeah, I know, but here we are.
Well, that's right. Here we are.
Well, according to your belief, so shall it be done unto you. So if you don't believe in that sort of thing happening, it couldn't happen to you.
That's right. It's not there.
At that point, I think the mind is so expanded, it could not cross the mind of that being. It just, it's too, it would be difficult, I would think, to try to manufacture a dream like that. You'd have to go so far back into a dream and start trying to believe you were a body again for that to even occur.
Yes.
Or maybe it could occur, but if you're in that state of mind, you realize it's not occurring. Does that make sense?
I mean, it would not occur.
It would not occur.
I agree.
It wouldn't.
It just wouldn't.
The thought that makes the occurrence possible is missing.
Right.
And it's only that thought that brings it into the experience. So,
So is that, I guess I'm thinking it from, I've taught also, I'm thinking it from the teacher's perspective. If the child is coming at you, but you're in the place, you're saying it cannot occur.
I'm not
There's
I guess I'm not
anymore.
understanding what place you're talking about.
There's no bodies anymore.
Yeah.
I'm not understanding what you're
We're
talking
not
about.
here. We're in the real world,
We're in mind.
in mind.
Yeah, totally mine.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah, and that's what I'm saying, that your mind is it cannot occur in the mind, in the image.
Which means it can't occur outside of the
physical?
mind. Because there is nothing outside of the mind that's not projected.
So you're in Christ's vision, looking down on the battlefield, seeing an illusion.
I'm saying the battlefield is gone.
Can't see an illusion.
There's no reason to see an illusion. Because there's a knowing that it is an illusion, and there's no desire to try to find an illusion. It lives in, the light lives in truth, it lives within itself, and it includes everything. Everything that seemed to have been part of all the illusions has been solved, and it's resurrected and changed, identified as a dream and left as a dream.
Its misty clouds and vaporous illusions vanish as these words are spoken.
Yes, exactly so.
Because your world is a thought, and if you've had that thought that there is a battlefield out there, then you've lost that world of God. You've stepped out of that.
Right.
You've stepped out of that connection, that who you really were.
It's the difference between saying, I want to be above the battlefield, which means there is one,
Yes.
and saying,
There is no battlefield.
it's not even that. It's knowing that
Knowing
you are
who
just
you
in love and everything you encounter is in love. And the idea of a battlefield isn't there to grab. Like Tom said, that thought can't come by.
So if she has a student that comes at her in aggression, she has willed that student to come at her in aggression because she's, I guess that's the part I just need clarification with.
The part
Yeah.
that we're confused with
Yeah.
is that we are talking about how do we, in this case, how do we respond when I do have that thought?
Right.
It's not as though
Which
that
thought?
can't happen.
How do you mean when you
The
have
thought
one
that there is a battlefield.
Okay.
And suddenly I'm experiencing a battlefield. It's how do I respond to that? That's not the point where I can say, whoops, wait a minute, there's no battlefield. I've already created the battlefield. So now, the God self comes into the picture to orchestrate the different responses and how your experience can alter the battlefield.
Maybe you'll realize, I'm in a dream, and it seems to be a war.
Here's the thing though. I can't really in this moment come from
I can't
what
either.
you're speaking
I
about.
can't come from that either.
Because in my own experience, I've been as far as experiencing, just being totally engulfed in light as light. Not even awareness of my body or anything, standing in my house and suddenly my baby screams and cries. And I'm feeling like I'm bigger than the neighborhood. I don't even feel any end to what this is, as awareness and light. And the moment of that cry, and it's the kind of cry when a mother hears it, it's like something's up, That contracted, that fine pointed attention baby cry. So someone running at me with a whatever, I think something's going to happen. And that was a pretty expanded field of consciousness and awareness. So I don't know about this place you're talking about. That sounds like after we dropped the body and died. And,
There's no death-
but I don't
no
know.
death
I
involved.
don't know because I haven't had that experience that you're talking about. I haven't ever.
Well,
But I do know in an instant we can that quickly.
Answer that. The thing that, again, is making it confusing is that it's entirely possible for you to be in one state of mind
Yeah.
and be in a euphoric state of mind and still have a fundamental belief that the battlefield exists. And so you can seem then to be called back from that expanded nirvana,
Right.
and now you're back to the battlefield. Because
Right.
it is possible. We do have a split mind. Okay? We do have a split mind. And part of that mind can be totally devoted to its idea of euphoria. and the other part of the mind be absolutely captivated by what is opposite to the euphoria,
Drama.
the drama.
Well,
Yeah?
I don't know. All I know
That's
is
confusing.
it called attention to do something
Yes.
with the baby. So it didn't feel like how you normally would think of judgment. But in
I
an
know.
instant, there was
That's
this
why I'm
awareness
trying
that this is judgment. Any thought, like anything that
That's what
comes
I'm trying to
in.
explain to you. You can have both thoughts.
Yeah.
You can have the thought of being in perfect alignment with the God self and not be in perfect alignment
It's
with the God self.
in the world, but not of the world.
You can-
It's the idea of both and vacillating, I think.
Yeah, yeah. And you can go back and forth between the two.
How do you get from one to the other without
See?
Well,
That's a good point.
but the awareness too allowed then a relaxation to come back because there's the sense of, oh, that's like contraction.
Well,
And
if
then,
that weren't true, we would have no need for the God self. We would all, because ultimately we are going to recognize that we all are as God created us. That's the one thing, as the Course says, that you can't forever deny. You've got to, one day, you've got to accept the truth of what you really are. Okay? So without that, we'd have no need for the God self, for the Holy Spirit. But because our mind is fundamentally split, we can do both. And that's what makes it confusing. We can be in a state of total euphoria. Okay? We can be in the, I would even go so far as to say we could be with the God self and then get yanked back by an underlying fundamental belief that did not change while we were in the state of
Right.
euphoria.
right,
So can you be
Right.
in both simultaneously?
No.
No.
Either or.
no, he's saying both can exist, and so then your
Both
system's
exist, and we
responding to
fluctuate
both.
between the two.
Yeah, so
But
you're
not-
fluctuating,
not the same
oscillating.
simultaneously.
What was the catalyst for
So
you?
I feel that's true, and that's what happens. That's what happens a lot with me, actually. That happens a lot.
What was the catalyst for you being bathed in light?
Oh God, that's a long story. I
Oh,
don't want to
briefly.
take up the whole group. But
Okay.
yeah.
Well, the Course talks about the
catalyst-
holy instant,
I-
when you enter that period. And John Mundy, in his latest book, says those instants don't last. You know, the holy instant where you go into that place you're talking about and you experience that, it doesn't last. You wind up.
Yeah, he doesn't talk about it being a holy half hour.
No.
Only half hour.
Although,
Yeah, it's the holy instant.
although the one you're asking me about went on, I mean, I don't know, 3 or 4 months.
No holy half
Largely.
hours.
To different degrees, pretty intensely. And I mean, to make it really short, basically, I was desperate for it. I just gave up my entire life, turned my back on my life as I knew it. Just basically said to heaven, I can't stand being here without knowing God. I have to know what is God. I have to know myself and God. I have to know. And boom. It happened.
And you have. You have been there.
Yes, and what you're pointing to though is what it feels like when, so there was, you could say, a figure ground shift in awareness, where then what I would call the suffering self went to the backdrop, and the more illuminated self was in the
Yes.
foreground of awareness.
Yes.
And it still will figure ground shift at times, and it's a milder version most of the time. It can intensify depending on what's going on. But that was a very severe, that 3 to 4 months was quite intense. But towards the end of it, it started to become milder and milder until the figure ground shifted back to the suffering self being more in the foreground and that being in the backdrop to sometimes arise because of the patterns that are still in place.
The thing that,
So,
the
and
thing that
that's-
makes
and
us
that's-
beneficial
Huh?
The thing that makes it beneficial is when we teach ourselves to remember that
Yes.
when we are in that state of euphoria, we can stop while being there and say to the God self, now show me what I really want. In other words, not to be misled that this is what we're really after, because it's not. This is what the ego is really after, but it's not what the God self is trying to show us. If we were where the God self would like to have us be, we wouldn't experience these back and forth shifts. We would stay there forever. It would be permanent. And the reason that it is not permanent is because we're not sure we want it totally.
Right. The clearest example I have of that shift and how quickly it can happen is your story, Tom, about, and as I start this, please take over and correct anything as I paraphrase, but you had asked Brother about the expansive mind, and you got a symbolic picture of it, of being the universe and all the planets and all the stars, and you can take over any time. You know the one I'm talking about?
Yeah.
And you know the point at which it all left like that too.
Yeah. This all started off with him trying to explain to me what the Big Bang Theory really was about. And it was at the moment when our mind stopped feeling its wholeness and accepted infinite other possibilities. And so it appeared that the planets, the stars, everything all flew apart. And now the mind was not whole nor complete. And Brother was saying, this is not where you are. This is just an idea. That whole panoply of expanding and fractured universes were way too small to fit the mind of the Son of God.
I think I recall, and I think you had it printed out, and most of us got a copy years ago, but I think if I remember what I read properly, it was that you asked the question of Brother, in this expansive universe, in this Big Bang and all the stars, and feeling that you are all of that and more, I think you asked the question, if I remember right, where am I in all of this? And then it zoomed right back down.
And everything collapsed.
Everything collapsed. By trying to be a separate individual in the whole.
Yep.
Yeah.
I've often thought that the word I is the most divisive word in history because it doesn't include anyone but me. And so we need to come up with some word that, well, we say we, but we is still a small group to most of us. I don't think many people see we as everybody.
You know, that's interesting, Jim, because apparently archaeologists and people who study the ancient Hopi language from the Hopi Indians in Arizona, apparently, historically, they did not have a word for I or a word for me. It was we and us, and that was it. And it was, you could see it being, in essence, there is no me without us. And it's true, isn't it? You know, I wouldn't love you if you were the last man on earth or something. Well, no, you know, one doesn't interact much. I have the feeling that's why God created a son, for interaction. Even within everything, there has to be a construction of everything or an inclusion of everything. Something needs to be included. So that's the only purpose I find in this idea of separation.
The idea of separation is not about the separation of numbers. You know, you can have 10 billion, one. 10 billion as one. It's not the 10 billion that's important. It's the function you give to the 10 billion as either functioning as a self or as a totally divided entity that has no meaning.
To me, it's the joining in which the resurrection lies, and that is where the joy is, and that is where the life is the reconciliation in the mind of, oh my God, we are one, this was a dream. But from all different, I use the word flavors, of looking at everything from every possible position. In Neil Donald Walsh's book, he talks about basically the separation was the Son of God trying to look at itself from outside of itself. And so you have all these different points of view that are all coming to the same point of view. But they each have the flavor of their lives, even us at this level, or there would be no purpose for the separation at all. And beyond that, there would be no coming back from it. It would be oblivion. The idea of separation carried to extremes is the idea of oblivion.
Daddy, I interrupted you when you were just getting started. Would you
I'll start
please
again.
continue? Start over again, if you would, please.
I am as God created me. This single thought, held firmly in the mind, would save the world. From time to time, we will repeat it as we reach another stage in learning. It will mean far more to you as you advance. These words are sacred, for they are the words God gave in answer to the world you made. By them it disappears, and all things seen within its misty clouds and vaporous illusions vanish as these words are spoken, for they come from God.
Matt?
Here is the word by which the Son became his Father's happiness, his love, and his completion. Your creation is proclaimed and honored as it is. There is no dream these words will not dispel, no thought of sin and no illusion which the dream contains that will not fade away before their might. They are the trumpet of awakening that sounds around the world. The dead awake in answer to its call. And those who live and hear this sound will never look on death.
Any comments?
There's another lesson that repeats this pretty much. I think it's I'm not a body, I am free, I am still as God created me. So it is a central theme, as you mentioned.
Isn't it interesting, though? The dead awake in answer to its call. Where are the dead that awaken?
In their egos.
In the dream of death in the first place. In these kind of dreams, one of which we seem to be involved in right now. It's giving over a fragment of the mind to a belief in death. That belief is changed, is the only way I look at that when it says the dead awake in mind.
Yes.
Holy indeed is he who makes these words his own, rising with them in his mind, recalling them throughout the day, at night, bringing them with him as he goes to sleep. His dreams are happy and his rest secure, his safety certain and his body healed, because he sleeps and wakens with truth before him always. He will save the world because he gives the world what he receives each time he practices the words of truth.
Mary Alice?
Today we practice simply, for the words we use are mighty, and they need no thoughts beyond themselves to change the mind of him who uses them. So wholly it is changed that it is now the treasury in which God places all his gifts and all his love to be distributed to all the world. Increased in giving, kept complete because its sharing is unlimited. And thus you learn to think with God. Christ's vision has restored your sight while salvaging your mind.
Thus you learn to think with God.
If we see God as love, that's really easy. I mean, to think with love is to think with God. But if we see God as this manipulative guy who can get angry and destroy us, or something like that, which is sort of a traditional view of God, then we just don't want to piss him off. You know, I mean, that's got to be our top priority.
Well, that's the God of fear, isn't it?
Yes, it is, the God of fear.
And what I think the whole New Testament was about, I guess, is the idea that the real God is a God of love.
Yeah, to rise above fear, yeah.
And before we can really see that, apparently we have to forgive the God of fear. Because where are all these thoughts? They're in our minds. So if we have a God of fear in our mind, we have to forgive that thought. And it can seem like forgiving that God of fear. In my mind, I'm forgiving myself for putting me in a position, I think, that I don't feel responsible for. At some point, I got to take responsibility. And the only way I can do that is realizing that I am myself, with a capital S.
You am,
I am.
and you stop there, right? I am.
I guess that's where it goes. But I don't want to add the word illusion or dream behind it either.
No way. Yeah.
So, too bad Einstein didn't read this because he said, I want to think like God. So if Einstein supposedly could have repeated this every day like it's telling us to do, maybe he would have got there.
Maybe he did.
Well, he had divine inspiration. I don't think most of us maybe would question that. I don't know. But I believe he had divine inspiration.
Maybe.
And you know, most of his ideas
Einstein.
came from his wife. That's the rumor anyway.
You know,
I'm just saying, right?
So there it is, divine inspiration.
Must have been my second wife.
you know, we talk a lot about awakening, right? And okay, who's awakened? And when I think of that, I think possibly Einstein was one of them that was awakening. Maybe not awakened, but awakening way past where many of us are. And if one person can do it, my attitude is I can't do it.
You bet. Me too.
You gotta believe that, you know.
I
For it
do.
to happen, you got to.
But you have to play the part of you. You don't have to play his, and he doesn't have to play yours, and each one is of equal value, and that's the thing we have trouble with sometimes. We can take the least of us, and that part in all of this is of equal value to Einstein's part. And that's where the Course says, without you, that God is incomplete.
Talk about playing these roles. I was watching Jim Carrey on YouTube the other day, and evidently he's a student of the course, because he talked about there only being love and fear, and he said that the role of Jim Carrey was a great role, and he was glad to have been given. And you know, he made that movie called The Truman Show, The True Man, you know, which is kind of a spoof on the idea that we're all living in a dream or an illusion. And he went on to talk quite a bit about having had spiritual, I don't know if it's an awakening, maybe he has awakened, I don't know.
He's had some pretty extensive awakening experiences.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I remember reading a story about, was it Don Johnson of Miami Vice or something?
Yeah.
And I think he was talking to Bob Dylan, and I can't remember which one said what, but I think it was Bob Dylan that said to Don Johnson, is this something Don Johnson would do? And it was in quotes from Bob Dylan. I think one of them was, well, I would be amazed at the songs he wrote too if I wasn't Bob Dylan. In other words, he knows he's playing the part of Bob, you know, it's.
And you know there's no death. Look at Keith Richards.
Right.
It's from the Rolling Stone. Looks like he should have been dead a long time ago.
That's the heroin.
Exactly.
Those last two sentences, though, and thus you learn to think with God.
Yes.
Christ's vision has restored your sight by salvaging your mind. That's it. That's the thing right there.
Mary Alice?
I just read.
Oh, you did? And I guess we're at Scott.
We honor you today. Yours is the right to perfect holiness you now accept. With this acceptance is salvation brought to everyone. For who could cherish sin when holiness like this has blessed the world? Who could despair when perfect joy is yours, available to all, as remedy for grief and misery, all sense of loss, and for a complete escape from sin and guilt?
Sounds like a pretty good place.
Doesn't seem to be much of a good reason not to, does it?
No. And who would not now be brother to you now? You, his Redeemer and his Savior. Who can fail to welcome you into his heart with loving invitation, eager to unite with one like him in holiness? You are as God created you. These words dispel the night, and darkness is no more. The light has come today to bless the world. For you have recognized the Son of God, and in that recognition is the world's.
Do you feel that recognition of oneness on one level leads to it on a deeper level?
Yes.
For instance, through our sharing here, when I look at my guy there at school, and I put myself there and I feel the two of us and I see him, I start to feel him as myself, really wanting attention and love. And it's almost like a reflection of, okay, where is that in myself? But at the self same moment, he is myself. Like it's feeling both of those things at once. Like him showing up as almost like a mirror reflection,
That is the
but
desire
also
to
feeling
join.
him as myself.
That is your desire to join. And that is the so-called salvation.
When we see others as ourself, we're approaching heaven.
So that has been a much easier thing to experience when there's not someone with such crazy behavior. And it's beautiful to feel that. See, now I'm going to practice this all in next week when I go to work. And we'll see what I have to say next week.
I mean,
We'll see.
just keep asking.
Yes.
Just keep asking.
Yes.
My favorite statement from the Course is love is the answer. Whatever the question. Love is
Yes.
going to be the answer.
Yes. Yes.
And you will recognize that, obviously.
But I've always liked where it's told us everything that is not love is a call for love. And if I get that, then I can't really have an enemy of any sort. It's impossible. I can't even have someone who's not me. If I get that everything that isn't love is a call for love. Well, my work's cut out for me.
For all of us, Jim.
That's going to be my, maybe I'm going to carry that. Just keep asking. I write it on my hand.
I wonder if it wouldn't be helpful too to look at him and say, you are as God created you. Not acknowledge what's going on. See the truth.
Wouldn't that be frustrating to have a curriculum that is telling you otherwise? Because in a sense, what I'm hearing from you is that he doesn't want anything to do with most of the curriculum.
Oh, yeah. The system's not made to.
Yeah,
I'm working
and-
within a system
and
that is
who's
totally
to say
contradictory in a
he's
way.
wrong? You know, who determined that curriculum was right for him? It's tough because you're in a really tough situation where you're.
However, there are many times when I'm really in tune, and I can just look at him and say, hey. And when I'm really, he'll just, like stop everything. Because there's been a really strong rapport established by now through love and trust. And when I can really keep myself centered and remember to either ask, or maybe asking's not even needed because there's already that clarity.
Keep asking.
He's able to come around.
But isn't that
Today was
confusing?
especially gnarly. Today was especially. So there's a new level to work with. It's a new level. So what's that, Tom?
Even when you feel like clarity, ask.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah.
If the connection is there, the curriculum is probably meaningless.
Yeah. I mean, who knows how it all evolves in terms of the roles and everything. Maybe there will come a point where I feel like I'm meant to move out of that job. I don't know. I'll know it when that arrives. I'll know it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I really appreciate the practice that you do, both of you, in your teaching expression of, all the things that you come about. And I'm very grateful that the children who are with you are receiving what you are learning as well. That's a great gift. Probably the nicest gift we could give one another.
It's beautifully said, Linda.
Especially
Thank
since there's not a start and a finish. Do you know what I'm saying? Like when I used to work with dementia patients, sometimes it was rough when they caught you, and then sometimes if it was feeding time, I'd have a whole table of nonverbals, and I would just talk about my day and what was going on with my dog, and people would look over and we'd all be laughing, and they got it. Like it connected. At some level, actually, at some level, they're in there still, and they connected, and we'd all be laughing and stuff, and it was just like a precious moment, But I mean, the rest of the time, hard, emotional, fighting you, but you just.
I also worked on the dementia board.
Yeah, so it's just, you know what I mean? It's one of those things where it's not like you start, you complete the day, it's finished, everybody's happy. It's
Well,
like,
no,
it's
and
never, it's like
it teaches you also the spontaneous
Yes.
part of moment to moment to
Yeah.
moment.
That's what I was
More
thinking.
more than other situations can in some way. I mean, it's one of those things that
So
can
when you
help
have that
with
connection, that's really like a reminder of,
because you just don't know. It's so
Yeah.
also unexpected. You just don't know.
that's hard.
Thank you.
I got it easy to work with
Sharing.
animals.
Yeah.
So sweat. There's a start, there's a finish, they're always grateful.
That's it.
Seldom
And they
any
always
aggressive
have to-
behavior,
Never complain.
but they do pick up on your aura. They pick up on fear, they pick up on kindness, they pick up on love, they definitely do. And it's not as intense. So I should start working with kids as
You work at a wildlife shelter?
yeah, domestic wildlife, Sun Valley. I don't work at volunteer, so it's limited also, it's only 3 hours, 4 hours a week. Sometimes
Well, and sometimes our kids show up with, you just don't know what's gone on in the last half hour, them trying to get to school. Sometimes I can see them and mom and just, oh boy, it's been a battle. It's just, you're starting off the lip of a situation. Right? But that has to be called for too in some way.
I felt I was making progress. A number of years ago, I backed into a guy that was he just barely bumped him, but the guy was very intense and very aggressive and very loud and threatening me and this and that.
Were you in a car?
Yeah, but we got out. Okay. We got out. And I just kind of stepped back and I was almost an observer in the scene. And I really didn't react at all. My heart rate didn't go up. It would have if he'd be jumping. But I had the thought at the time, this is a course working for me. I didn't connect with him directly, but I was able to step out of the situation. Whereas before, I think I really would have been involved in an egocentric way, a big way. And he calmed down. I think in response to my non-reaction to him, and we went on our way.
I'm sitting here thinking about I am as God created me, and you are as God created you. And then I'm thinking, well, what about the people I've had difficulty with in my life? Like ex-wives. They are as God created them too.
Even further, the Course tells us they're our Savior. They're our Savior.
There is a sense that when we're in a situation that's challenging, there can be a sense of this couldn't happen if I were ready for it. And when I get that, then it's sort of like melts. Another word. It's like, well, anyway, drive a little slower, and they get a car and they leave, you know, something like that. And it's interesting to think that a lot of what we are is not verbal, not at all. It's in the way we stand, the way we scowl or smile or whatever. And we can be the love in any situation, even if it's not our, you know, we're in a grocery store and a couple people are in an argument, and we can just, by being non-judgmental, saying it's your fault, not yours, you know, none of that. We can actually heal the situation.
Like hold the space.
Yeah.
Hold the feel.
Yeah, and then when we do that, we have the sense that maybe this is why I'm here. Because I've been asking, she'll verify this. I've been asking maybe why I'm still here. And then something like this happens and I know, oh, okay, now I know why I'm here.
You know, I was at a retreat one time and this doctor was talking about, he worked at the hospital up in Ludlow. And he was talking about, he was having a tough time with the janitor, they just didn't get along. And he decided that every time he passed the janitor in the hall, he was just going to say to himself, I love you. And he said the whole situation changed. I told that to my ex-wife. She was working in this place where she didn't get along with one of the other women, and she did the same thing, and it changed the whole situation.
Said mentally, not verbally, right?
Yeah,
It's like ho'oponopono.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that's beautiful, and it's a simple practice, yet so powerful.